So the next thing I want to do is I want to talk about how is the left talking about this, and for that we'll go to the MS now because what better way to share what the left is thinking. So you look at the title here. It says here's how the potential new U.S.-Iran ceasefire deal is a win for Iran, and they go right in and they quote a guy from the Eurasia Group. Here we go. Overall, this is a victory for Iran, which endured over a month. A bombing closed the strait, kept it closed, and openly agreed to reopen it, and only agreed to reopen it via negotiated settlement with the United States. Gregory Brew, a senior Iran and oil analyst at the Eurasia Group, told MS Now. He goes on to say, none of the stated war goals of the Trump administration, replacing the regime, recreating the success in Venezuela, obtaining a sweeping nuclear deal, or even forcing open the strait were obtained. This is the part where right off the bat, I know that Gregory here is at least in part not an honest broker. So it would be one thing to say that Iran was able to keep the straits closed, which is to say, not that they had naval dominance, but they were able to suggest a threat significant enough to keep the private companies and the various countries who manage the oil tankers from attempting to risk it. Right. So it's not that Iran had naval superiority of the Straits of Hormuz. They didn't need it. All they needed was a credible asymmetric threat. Hey, if you try to pass the strait, we'll launch a missile at you, you'll hit a mine, whatever it is, and you're going to lose a tanker. And that was sufficient for those companies to not risk it. And that is frustrating in the United States, right? Because from a U.S. perspective, it's like we have such military dominance over there that Iran, again, even stopped launching missiles because they realized that the cost-benefit analysis didn't weigh out for them. And yet, that asymmetric threat was sufficient enough to keep a lot of the companies from wanting to risk trying to leave the strait in an oil tanker. So that part's fair. But then when he goes into this whole idea of none of the stated war goals of the Trump administration, replacing the regime, not a stated war goal of the Trump administration, recreating the success in Venezuela, not a stated objective of the Trump administration, obtaining a sweeping nuclear deal. You're right, that hasn't been attained yet. That's part of what the negotiation is for, right? Or even forcing open the strait. Okay, that one's fair. But you see right off the bat, he started with replacing the regime and recreating the success in Venezuela. That was never once listed as an objective of the Trump administration. Trump did said, as he listed out his 4 objectives, that this would be a good time for the people of Iran to rise up and overthrow their government. But he didn't say it was an objective of the Trump administration. So right off the bat, Gregory Brew here from the Eurasia Group doesn't seem to be operating in good faith. And this is one of the biggest problems that I have with respect to the way that the left does analysis on this. It says, in a major win for the U.S., the proposed memorandum of understanding, which is still pending approval from President Donald Trump, says ship movements through the Strait of Hormuz will be unrestricted, no fees or tolls. Now, again, and if you want to be objective here, you could look at it and say, okay, well, that was already happening before we started launching strikes in Iran. So what have you really gained by going back to what was already existing before you did the strikes? And the argument there is the Iranian Navy has been degraded. They have not been able to help or deal with their proxies the way that they have because they're too busy with their own problems. They haven't been able to sell, drones to Russia. They haven't been able to launch other attacks that they might have otherwise, would. And clearly the facilities that they use to try to enrich uranium and whatnot, these have been significantly degraded. So again, it's important to understand that it is correct to say that before we started launching the straits, there was pretty much free movement through the Strait of Hormuz. And so what have you really gained by just reopening that up? And it's like, well, the answer is now it's being opened up with significant degrading of Iranian military capability, nuclear capability, missile capability, et cetera, right? So that is a difference. I'm not saying it's a sweeping victory for the Trump administration, but it is a legitimate difference that should be done. But like right off the bat, like I look at Gregory Brew and I look at the way that MS Now is doing this, and it's important to understand that once again, they don't like the Trump administration. Making the Trump administration look bad, it works out well for them.